What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grindline Podcast. I'm your host, Greg. You are listening to episode 290. I'm here tonight with Ryan. There's,
Ooh,
a little bit of,
290?
290.
Ooh.
Yeah, last episode was 289. This is 290. We got to do something for 300. But,
That's where my oohs were going.
ooh. But we have a little bit of stuff, I guess. It gets so much harder the closer you get to training camp and to the now what they're calling the prospect games, because you can't call it a tournament with only two teams, that like you're waiting for stuff to happen, and then Lucas Raymond tweets out a picture and you're like, well, they're still in Germany, so the contracts aren't happening. But how are you doing tonight?
Other than chastising Tyler like one of my children right now, pretty good. Just waiting for news, waiting for stuff to happen. There's been unfortunate NHL news, but um, nothing Red Wings related, which is good and bad. I guess depends on the day and how you want to look at it.
Yeah, so I guess we can cover the unfortunate news off the top. I mean, we woke up to it, what was it, Saturday morning? It's like how we started, everyone started their weekend, where Johnny Gaudreau and his brother Matthew were, I'm going to say, basically murdered by
Yes,
a drunk man in a car. They were biking the day before their sister's wedding, and he
it was
apparently went to
Thursday evening.
Thursday evening, and he went
Oh,
around a car to pass them and hit the
on the
Gaudreau
right,
brothers on
on
their
the
bikes.
berm.
Yep, he said he had 5 or 6 beers. Folks, this is going to be a blanket statement. Uber is a thing. Taxis are a thing. Friends with cell phones are a thing. Don't drive drunk. That is
Yeah,
just the stupidest thing you could possibly do. The NHL loses one of its star players. His brother, too, played in the ECHL. He was also a professional hockey player. And the hockey world loses two high end players that just, it's absolutely way too soon. And
very,
the day
very good
before their
people.
sister's wedding.
Yeah, it's Johnny had two little ones and a Matthew. There's a big GoFundMe because he has his first was on the way. It's devastating. I hits home because my cousin ironically was also killed in near exact fashion only a month or so, almost 2 months ago now. Riding his bike, hit by a car, and it's weird. You see it happen and you don't and you know that it is a thing. I mean, accidents take place, but I guess since that, it seems like I've noticed it more. Kind of like when you're looking for a new car, you see that car everywhere. Well, when an event happens, you tend to pick it out a little bit more often. And but what sucks even more is that it can be avoidable, and the one with the Gaudreaus was avoidable.
That's just a PSA that if you have any indication that you cannot drive, please get another way home that is not going to kill somebody. Please. That is our plea to everyone out there. And just it's our thoughts and our good vibes and everything go out to the Gaudreau family, the entire Columbus Blue Jackets fan base and organization, the Calgary Flames fan base and organization, really hockey fans in general, because this in some way or somehow really hits most of the hockey fan base and pro sports. I mean, there was LeBron James tweeted out. There was a bunch of people not from the hockey world that were commenting on it. So it sucks. It wasn't a good way to start the weekend.
Especially both fan bases. Calgary, and I know the Blue Jackets were holding as we're, I think it's just finishing up. They had a vigil outside of Nationwide Arena. The Saddle Dome was adorned with tons of memorabilia in homage of Johnny. So both fan bases really went above and beyond and showed their love for their city, their team, their player, and each other.
Yep. So we're gonna move on to the next subject, which is actually a little bit of Red Wings stuff. Before the second half of the show, we're going to talk about the prospect games and training camp. Austin Watson about, and I missed this completely because the Red Wings did not announce it. This was announced by his agency, I believe it was. Austin Watson signs a PTO with the Red Wings to go to camp. Think of, for those of you that don't know who Austin Watson is, Think of him as a Luke Witkowski with a smidge more offense. That's basically what he is. Last season in 33 games for the Tampa Bay Lightning, he had 2 goals and 2 assists for 4 points, but he's missing most of his teeth, so he beats the crap out of people. And there's also controversy surrounding Austin Watson because at one point he had a domestic violence lawsuit out from his girlfriend. And yeah, he is now on a PTO with the Detroit Red Wings. So does this move your needle at all, Ryan?
No, it's a body to fill space in the preseason.
Could you maybe see him signing an AHL deal though?
I could see it. I was looking up. I knew I had a few one angry tweet about him from February of 2023 about a cross check followed by interference. So I knew I had something out there on this son of a bitch because
Yeah, it's the
he
kind of player he
plays.
is.
He's the type of guy. I mean, when he was playing decent NHL minutes, which I don't even know if decent's the right word to use to describe his career at this point, he's a shit disturber. And depending on what you're trying to do, I mean, what you think, I think to your point about the AHL, it would actually make sense. And the reason I say that is you've got some fragile pieces down in Grand Rapids this season.
Well,
And
not fragile, just young.
well, fragile in meaning you don't want to break them. They're the fine china sitting up on the oh my god, the word I'm trying to
The,
use right
they're the
now, the
liquor on the high
shelf.
shelf.
Yeah, that you don't want broken, and that is a guy that would make sure they don't get broken. So that would make sense. In Detroit makes zero sense. He's a guy that you could probably throw back and forth and not have to worry about it. So that'd be one way to maybe approach it. But I mean,
I think the highlight of his career is his 123 penalty minutes in the 2023-20 or 2022-23 season with Ottawa, and then his 123 penalty minutes in the 2017-18 season with the Nashville Predators. Again, it's nothing. I think there is next to zero chance that he makes the Detroit Red Wings, that he actually gets a contract to play on the Red Wings. If anything, he gets a two-way deal, so he makes a little bit less money down in the AHL, and he starts with the Griffins, and he's a call up every once in a while if there's like extreme injury plague, or you like know you need a guy to just come in and beat people up.
yeah,
That's all Austin Watson is going to provide. So to me, there's nothing there. That's so much so that the Red Wings themselves didn't even announce it.
yeah,
That's how little there is there. The other rumor that's floating around that I also am not a super fan of, but for different reasons, is that it's been going around for a little bit that the Red Wings and Maple Leafs are showing interest in Max Pacioretty. Max Pacioretty is 35 years old, 35 years old now. Yeah, he'll be 36 in November. He's again, okay, so for all intents and purposes, 6'2", 217 pounds, known as Patches. Also one of his nicknames, Wolverine, because he did play for U of M. Last season in 47 games played, had 4 goals and 19 assists with a god awful Washington Capitals team who coincidentally made it into the playoffs and not us. In 2022-23, though, for the Carolina Hurricanes, he was sidelined most of the season. Only played 5 games, had 3 goals in those 5 games. He has not played more than 48 games since 2019-20, where he played
injuries.
71.
He has been decimated the last several years by injuries.
Horribly. And it's not going to get, the thing is like, it's not going to get better. And that's where my worry lies, is that you sign a guy like this. Again, you're taking, where's the spot? That's, I guess, what we'll talk about in a second. But you sign a guy like this and you hope he maybe plays 20 games, 30 games, hopefully for you during the season, which is not nothing, but it's not something that, unless you can get a guy who you think is going to be an impact player night in and night out, why? Why bother even doing that?
I don't know. We're getting to the funny spot at the end of the off season where shit's going to start coming up and it's not going to make a lot of sense. And then we're going to look at it and be like, why are we talking about that? This, I feel like should be one of those situations. I mean, if we were talking 4 or 5 years ago, absolutely. I would have loved him in Detroit. Would have loved him here a long time ago, even going back to the days when he was in Montreal.
if you would have told 2016, 2017 me that we were getting Max Pacioretty, I'd be stoked. It would have been fantastic times.
Yeah.
2023, 24 me, not so excited.
No, not for a guy that's going to be 36 years old. Oh, you gave a thumbs up and it put it in the screen. Look at
I scratched my nose and it put a thumbs up
that.
on the screen.
I don't have mine on. Oh, anyways. No, yeah, it's if he was several years younger, then I'd probably be a bit more excited about it, but he'd also be signing an actual, probably long-term deal. I mean, the only hope you could maybe put into it is that it would be realistically a cheap, super cheap deal, but that might be a stretch of the imagination. So it's with where Detroit's at, and we talked about it. I want to say, was it last week? Really the last couple of weeks. They've got three guys to sign: Burgers, Mo, Ray Ray. Patches can't fit into that space of 17.6 million. I just don't see a realistic scenario with it.
That is, unless you make a trade to get someone out, unless you waive a couple guys. So if you waive, because you got to think that right now, I think Lageson's money is on Puckpedia, even though he will be in Grand Rapids. So there's like
Yeah.
$750,000. You could end up waiving someone like a Justin Hole and sending him to Grand Rapids and recouping about 1.5 million. If you think they might waive a goalie, I had a conversation this week that maybe they waive Husso. Maybe Husso goes to Grand Rapids, and that's another 1.5 million. So there's ways you can make money. That I don't think is the issue. The biggest issue to me is roster spot. You have to play Berggren this season unless you're going to trade him. Does playing Max Pacioretty make Berggren an extra forward? What do you do with Tyler Mott? Are Berggren and Mott going to both be extra forwards? What looks to me is the biggest issue is not money, it's space on the roster. So where do you put him if you do sign him?
Well, does he fit that? I don't know if I want to call it mold, but what they've put together in regards to team speed, because they are now a pretty fast moving roster. If you look at the forward group, not saying that they're going to burn the ice down because of how they're flying across the ice, but that bottom six in particular is going to be high tempo, high pace going group of guys, and that's where you would think Pacioretty's going to fall. There's no way, in my opinion, and he'll be in your top six. I think he could be dangerous maybe on a second pair power play unit, but yeah, I don't see how it really makes sense.
Yeah, you'd almost think that he'd be almost exclusively like power play. Like you'd only play him in situations where you don't think he's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And power play is like one of the big situations you don't think he's going to get hurt because you got an extra guy and the other team is scrambling most of the time. So I could see that. But again, do you sign a guy, give him a roster spot to mainly just play power play too? You don't do that. So my gut tells me that this
They're
is
going to
just
roll a lot of 11-7 this year.
sure, but my gut tells me this is just again the last bit of off-season fluff that you have to put out there before prospect stuff starts and training camp stuff starts because you literally have nothing else to talk about at this point. And if Toronto signs him, my God, that will be one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Well, and two, I mean, the realistic approach is you do have to bring these guys on for a PTO or even a short look, if you will, because Burgers and Raymond don't have contracts. You have to have ducks in a row. There's a reason why you look at the NFL. They have the roster cuts throughout preseason, and then it gets down to that final 53 going into the start. So a lot of NHL teams are getting their ducks in a row. That if things happen, Detroit's one of them where they don't have guys signed that need to be signed. I'm not saying they're not going to be, but this potentially fills that if stuff goes sideways.
Yeah, I think signing him to a PTO would not be a huge issue. I think if you did that, if you said, hey, we're going to bring Max Pacioretty in on a PTO, clearly, here's the thing. Clearly, there's not a huge wait list to get Max Pacioretty on a team. And to me, it's really weird because you look like the Maple Leafs are trying to push for a to try and get past again the first round of the playoffs. their initial issue was defense. So we're going to sign 35-year-old Max Pacioretty, who hasn't played more than 48 games in 4 seasons. That doesn't make sense to me, which is why I say I think it would be hilarious if the Toronto Maple Leafs signed him. But then you look at the Red Wings, who are trying to get into the playoffs, and I don't think that helps them with this either. Get another guy who could get a season-ending injury, and then you're back at square one. So for the opposite reason of Austin Watson, as to where Austin Watson's just completely unnecessary because he doesn't really do anything.
Mhm.
Max Pacioretty is completely unnecessary because he is old. He's on the wrong side of 30, like the far wrong side of 30, and he's super duper injury prone.
It's interesting because he had 23 points last season and just over 12 minutes of time on ice.
No, last season he had an ATOI of 1426.
Can I not what?
2023-24 with Washington, 1426.
Oh, I just did a quick math thing, and that's what it gave me. So never mind. That's weird.
Math sucks. We hate math.
I do hate math. I'm in finance class. It's the worst.
So we are both a no on Austin Watson.
I'll take him in Grand Rapids.
Sure, that's great. There's no way you're getting Max Pacioretty in Grand Rapids, so we are both,
No.
I think, a no on just Max Pacioretty in general. Oh, do we want to laugh about a couple things? Well, laugh about one thing, cry about another thing.
Maybe.
Okay, Philip Zadina signed a
Oh.
deal overseas. That's kind of my cry about it, okay? I mean, laugh about it and cry about it because, again, wasted pick just in general. At the time, we didn't know that. But knowing what we know now, wasted pick. Absolutely. That is, and he there's a video and he did a whole tweet
Hey,
and we're like,
you know what?
hilarious.
Good for him. He's back home ish. He's close enough. I'll put it that way. But that sucks, man. That whole situation just sucks. We were
The
all
final
so
nail in the
freaking
coffin from
pumped
Ken
when
Holland.
he got picked. He fell to Detroit, and Ken Holland was there right for the taking to get him, and we all got royally shit on. It sucks.
Take the L and move on. That's what we're doing with that one.
Well, we thought it's because we knew it. The way it was going to play out, that Zadina was going to get picked by Montreal. That was going to give us Quinn Hughes, and life would be all hunky dory. And here we are.
Well, the other Red Wing that signed overseas is Dominik Kubalik, former Detroit Red Wings legend Dominik Kubalik, which that one was kind of surprising to me because Kubalik was still, I thought, decently effective and went through the whole offseason without a contract. And today, I believe it was, signed overseas, which that, again, a little bit surprising to me because I think he's still a useful player in the NHL.
He's only 28, which
And
Zadina's
youngish.
younger, but I mean, that he's shown far more than Zadina has. I mean, you look at Kubalik's career, really his fall off was in Ottawa last season, but in a way
Wasn't
that wasn't
everyone's.
surprising because I mean, he had his almost career best numbers with Detroit with 45 points in 81 games, where before that was with Chicago in I think his rookie season where he had 46 and 68. So he had a breakout season last year, and then obviously was a part of that trade for DeBrincat. But man, that was because he's had great international. I shouldn't say great. He's had very good international success. We've seen that translate here to the NHL, and it's. I mean, it is what it is, but at the same time, I am more surprised at that move than I am with Zadina. I think as soon as Zadina said I wanted out, our joke was that he was going to end up in some foreign European league, and sure enough, here we are.
Yeah, I think that just goes to show that Ottawa is where careers go to die. It has killed Dominik Kubalik. Chikrin got out when he could, so hopefully his career is saved. But it's Ottawa, man.
I don't know.
That's what
Chikrin might be
happens.
too much of a drama case to save himself.
I don't know. I just think that there are players, and it's happened recently too, that it come out of Ottawa is DeBrincat. They're not happy there. And I mean, this is another one. Kubalik,
Intrigued to
it's
Tarasenko's thought.
It's I want to, yeah, I think that would be interesting to hear is, hey Vladdy, how was Ottawa?
Well, Perron just went there, so we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a quick break. We have a word from DraftKings and BetterHelp, and then we will be back to talk about the prospect games and maybe touch a little bit on training camp and interesting stuff going into it. So we'll be right back in just a minute after a word from our sponsors. Bet the action on the ice with DraftKings Sportsbook. It's never too early to get in your Stanley Cup predictions for the 24-25 season. Maybe not the Detroit Red Wings, but hey, maybe you think Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers might actually pull it off this time. So download the app now and use code THPN. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on hockey. That's code THPN only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. The crown is yours. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPENY or text HOPENY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024. All rights reserved. This episode of the Grindline Podcast is brought to you by BetterHelp. Is there a skill you've been meaning to learn? Something you see someone else doing, you're saying, man, I think I'd be really good at that, or that would be a ton of fun. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder because your back-to-school era can come at any age. Therapy has a stigma of just being for people that are experiencing trauma in their lives, but it can be for anyone and can help with things like coping skills and setting healthy boundaries to make you a better person. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. You don't like the one you're matched with? You can switch at any time for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/THPN today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/THPN. And we're back, and we are going to talk a little bit about the prospect games roster and maybe a little bit about training camp.
Like low-key Olympics, or like they're about
prospect
to go duel.
Games. The prospect
battle in the
games is
arena.
what they're calling it now. So the Red Wings tweeted out the roster. There's a bunch of names on there that no one has any clue who they are. They are free agent invitees, which prompted the question. So I guess first, here are the people that we do know. Michael Brandsegg-Nygård, Nate Danielson, Andre Beecher. Let's see who else. Emmett Finney, Alex Doucette, and Jakub Richlovsky, who we picked up from the Czech League, I believe it was. That is one. He hopes to get a spot on the Detroit roster. I don't think it'll happen out of the tournament or out of preseason, because I do think he will get preseason games. But I do think there is a chance that if he does show well and start playing well in Grand Rapids, that he could be an injury call-up. On defense, Shai Buium and Buium, and goaltenders Carter Gylander, Landon Miller, and Gage Alexander. Those are actually three goaltenders that are in the Detroit system. Gage Alexander, we just got recently in one of the trades that we did. Landon Miller is one that we drafted. Carter Gylander came from Colgate, should be playing in Toledo this season. So it's not a lot, which prompted the question, where the hell is everyone? So the way that happens is that NCAA players are not eligible. The NCAA does not let the players attend camps or prospect tournaments or anything like that. They're in school, their seasons are starting, they're getting ready. So you won't see guys like Red Savage, for instance, or Trey Augustine, because they are at Michigan State getting ready to play. Red Savage was just recently named one of the captains for the Michigan State team. Pretty cool. The guys that are in the SHL, minus Michael Brandsegg-Nygård, who is a extremely rare exception. The SHL season starts in a few weeks. They've already basically are going through preseason right now. They've had preseason games where Brandsegg-Nygård has looked phenomenal. Just a booming shot, has been scoring in buckets. It's great. So you won't see SHL guys. Now, everyone else, you should see. But that just leaves a couple guys. Nate Danielson's playing in Grand Rapids. Andre Beecher, I think he's the one we talked about. Big, has a great shot, has already played his time in the CHL. He could play in Grand Rapids, and I think he probably should. He's a guy that if you can get him in there and develop him well, and he's a rugged guy and he hits people, but he also has really good offensive talent, I think would be successful. Carson Bantle, he's one that's on the list. He is already a Grand Rapids Griffin. The Red Wings DRW prospects. If you don't follow them on X, you should. Say he already has a contract. Same with Gabriel Seeger. They both already have contracts with the Griffins. Alex Doucette played for Toledo last season mostly, and Emmett Finney should be a Grand Rapids Griffin this season as well. So there are guys on there that are familiar. There are a ton of free agent invitees. All but one defenseman is a free agent invitee. So I want to look at it from this way. Should the NCAA change their rules to let the NHL prospects get in for a weekend just to get into a prospect tournament? Like break. Could the NCAA take a week break to let the prospects go to their prospect tournaments?
No, I see why not. It'd be nice if they were, but it's exhibition games. So I don't know. Maybe if we saw more agreements get into place, like we see with some of the SHL, NHL, or and CHL and NHL, what have you, maybe that could be a thing. I don't know if the NCAA has anything at all with the NHL. I would assume not, based just because of the money aspect. Which I don't know how nil would possibly impact that. Would I love to see him? Yeah, but it's whatever. I want to see Grand Rapids, and I want to see the preseason get going. As much, this is probably the least excited I've been for the prospect tournament games, if you will, because all the teams have abandoned coming to Traverse City, which is literally depressing. So it'll be fun hockey to watch regardless. It'll be neat to see the updates. It'll be fun to see all the drills going on, the guys getting out there on the ice, watching them learn how to cook stuff and go golfing and be having fun, because Traverse City this time of year is beautiful, and I'll be jealous watching from home.
It's their last chance to be people before they have to be hockey players. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much.
So I'm in the same boat as you. It is disappointing what the prospect games have turned into in Traverse City. We talked about this, I think, last week or the week before, but it's really watered down, and that's probably also part of the reason that there are less teams. And I didn't think about that, is because more players are choosing the NCAA route. There's a lot of players playing over in Sweden to where you are now so watered down in the quality that you put on the ice, where you're paying to get guys there that aren't even going to be on your team. So you might as well get them in your own town where you have a little more control, because a lot of it's going to be free agent invitees. And sure, you might hit on one in 10 years, a free agent invitee that makes your team. 9 times out of 10, nothing happens. Now, a lot of these guys, Grand Rapids has spots to fill. Toledo's going to have some spots to fill. They could find guys from these lists, but it's very, very slim to no chance that the Red Wings actually pick up one of these players to play. I pulled a couple that I think are interesting. Let me pull up my sheet that I have on here. The first one is Boria Vallis. He is 6'2", 187-pound right shot forward. He is 20 years old, so he was eligible for the draft in 2023. And the reason he jumped out to me is because last season, in between Prince George and the Regina Pats in the WHL, in 67 games played, he had, 7, 8, 9, 10, had 70 points, which is big. In the playoffs, in 15 games, he had 13 points. So he has a shot. And reading his scouting report, it says that he isn't a dynamic puck carrier or scoring threat from range or speedy attacker. Instead, his path to the NHL will be leaning more on physical skills like net drives, puck protection, playmaking off retrievals, and winning inside positioning on opponents. He had all positive shooting and passing grades, an overall 83 based on Elite Prospects Draft Guide from 2023. And he's a guy that, the other thing is he played with Connor Bedard. that season. So the season he was
Small
scouted,
detail.
his draft season was like the Connor Bedard season. And they basically say that like spending most of a season alongside Connor Bedard is an easy way to look good. But they say he wasn't just a passenger, he was a reliable setup guy, a disciplined defender, and a scoring threat. So they gave him props in his own right. And maybe the Red Wings are like, hey, maybe he got overshadowed a bit by Connor Bedard. Let's get him in here and see if he can do anything. And then again, maybe he earns a contract from Grand Rapids or from Toledo.
Neat. No, you want skilled players, and we know that from what happens. You look at we've had the conversation before. You go back to a guy like Datsuk. Even when he's first coming into the league, if he's got skill, he's going to make others around him better. So if you have a guy that is like that, maybe it works out. If it does, you're a genius. If it doesn't, no one's going to know.
Yeah, the only other one that I was looking at was Braden Edwards. He is 6'1", 185 pounds. He is also 19 years old. Last season with the Lethbridge Hurricanes in WHL, 66 games played and 70 points. So again, it's a guy who is putting up points in his now fourth season in the WHL. But what's even more impressive is his draft year. In 68 games, he had 10 goals and 18 assists for 28 points. He brought that point total
Hmm.
from 28 to 70 in one season. And
What do you mean
he
the
was
ammo year of understanding?
sure, yeah. I think it's very Amadeus Lombardi-esque, where not to that degree, but a pop off in point production in one season. It says that he's a defensively sound center. He eliminates threats, supports battles, and shadowing top opponents in key situations. But it says, given his lack of production and dynamic skill, he's not likely to hear his name called in the draft, but his playmaking, defense, and growth suggests a prospect poised for a breakout 2023-24 season, which he did have. Developing more physical skills, puck protection, vision under pressure will help him take the next step. And it looks like he did that. So again, it's another guy who was draft eligible in 2023, but since he had a bad year, went undrafted and then killed it in the 2023-24 season and has gotten an invite to the prospect tournament where again, maybe he can earn a AHL or ECHL contract out of this. But more than anything, these games, whether it's the Detroit prospect tournament or there are some out west, there's a couple I think in Canada where these guys get to go there, these undrafted free agents, and showcase that they can actually do things and not just get looked at by the team that they're playing with during those prospect games, but teams from around the league watch all these games. They see what's happening. So you have the
Oh yeah.
eyes of all the scouting departments on you again. So it's not just I'm trying to get a contract with the Red Wings. It's I'm showing what I can do at the Red Wings camp to potentially get a contract somewhere.
I mean, a prime one example for that is Biak. Like, we were excited thinking that maybe he
I
was gonna,
wanted him.
yeah, we thought he would maybe go to Grand Rapids, and it kind of pointed like he would. And then all of a sudden, he's been released, and then did he sign with the Blues? Who did he go to? But regardless, it was one of those situations where you're like, this is a kid that made a name for himself in the camp and going through. Now let me rephrase that. He made a name to himself for the fans. We were endeared to the way that he was playing, but that is a guy of recent memory, like to your point there, that stands out to me as making a huge impact to what we as the unpaid people as fans see and would have liked to have had him in the prospect pool. And that so it'll be interesting to see how it plays out if anything does come from it. If not, again, like I said, it is what it is, but you hope maybe something to stick.
Yeah, last season, Jeremy Biakabatuka played one game with the Springfield Thunderbirds in the AHL, played 63 games with the Orlando Solar Bears in the ECHL. He is slated to play in Springfield again next season.
Is that with St. Louis?
I believe that is the St. Louis Blues prospect pool. So, I mean, again, it could happen. If anything, you get organizational depth and it helps your lower league teams to let your prospects take that next step because there's a fill in guy. Training camp, are there any storylines besides the extremely obvious one that we are following moving into training camp?
I think the big one for me is the goaltending situation.
Yeah, that's going
Who
to be a battle.
How is that going to play out? I mean, does Huso become the odd man out after all the last couple of years in injuries? Does Alex Lyon still see the fringe level that he saw last year? I feel like he's proven himself enough to fit in as at least a backup, if not start like 1A, 1B, or 1B, 1C, however you want to look at it. But I think that Cam Talbot's your starter, and it's his job to lose. He's got the pedigree to this point in the background, and Huso is still. I get Eiserman's comments is that he'll be ready by camp, but will he be? Like how?
I've seen nothing.
I know, which I mean, it's not surprising in a way, but that one scares me a little bit. I like we need a solid one, but we also need to not run that number one goalie into the ground like I feel like that has happened the last couple of seasons. So if we can get some consistency and balance there, they'll be in a great spot. But is it going to be two or is it going to be three? We know that Newsy talked a lot last year, not liking three goalies on the roster. So
What if it's 3 and Jack Campbell beats out Ville Huso for the third goalie spot?
forgot about Soup.
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
Wow.
Everyone forgets about Soup. And I think
Oof.
that the way that it makes sense of it falling is that you, again, because you couldn't get rid of one, carry 3 goalies in Detroit. Maybe they say Huso's going to be ready to start the season. Maybe he's not. Maybe Huso starts on IR. And then you've got Kosa and Campbell in Grand Rapids. And it's going to be Gylander and someone else. I can't remember who right now in Toledo.
Yeah.
So, and then, or the other way that I said earlier, maybe you end up waiving Huso. No one's going to pick him up for his contract value and recent injury history. And maybe he goes down because you do always need more goalies in Grand Rapids. They play
Mhm.
they play 3 game and 3 night stretches. They have a lot of back to backs. They have a lot of layoff time. But Sebastian Kosa needs that workload down there. He needs
Yeah.
to be the starter. It needs to be his net. He needs that one more year under his belt where he just shows out and performs really, really well before he comes up to Detroit and becomes the backup. Because that's the way your goalie contracts are rolling right now. They're rolling so that guys fall off each season, and you've got the guys to come in and be really, really good and start learning at the NHL level. And that's where Kosa is going to come in. Now, what we don't have is a presumed starting goaltender under contract while Kosa backs up. And that I think is going to be the interesting part going forward because I have not looked at free agent goaltending going into next season,
No, I haven't either.
but I don't think they're going to expect Sebastian Kosa to come in and immediately be the Detroit starter. They're going to need another guy for maybe 3 seasons before
Can you
you.
have that expectation, or do you think that with another full season as a pro goalie at the AHL level that he'll be able to make the move?
I think that would depend a lot on what he shows this season. And I think that would also depend on him coming in at some point during this season and getting backup games in Detroit, whether
True.
that is because of injury. But if you're running 3 goalies, it's going to be really hard for him to do that.
And I think that's where you have to run with two goalies. No, I think that the biggest thing there is having an open door for Huso to make that move. To your point of not have the 3 goalies, if we don't, that has the opportunity presents itself. I'm not saying that's the best case scenario.
Of anything on this whole team, the goalie situation in general
Scares
between
me.
the AHL and NHL is the most intriguing thing.
Yeah, and you don't because like the safe assumption is Talbot's your starter. Huso clears waivers. No one's taking the contract. I think Lyon gets picked up almost immediately by someone.
Yeah. Yep. Lion would get picked up.
So you run that risk of losing a guy that you know that can be healthy, but is he healthy? Like we know that he had the skate cut on his hand. Was his
Yeah,
hand?
he should be fine.
Assuming so, but it's. I mean, it's been several months. What was it back in June that took place? So we're 3 months removed. I don't know. It's that's the one situation I think that bothers me the most. outside to see how they're going to rotate the top six forward group. But I think the biggest storyline for this team right now is goalie.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that's where we're going to end the show tonight. Not much else happened. And so, Ryan, final thoughts and social, and then sign off.
Already ran 33.
Oh, beautiful. You can follow me online at Bringing the Wing. You follow the Grindline Podcast online at Grindline Pod. We will be at opening night. Ryan has secured us some nice seating arrangements, so we will be there.
A log,
something. The lounge. We'll be there. We will be
mahogany.
there. We are excited to see everybody. We do our whole huge Twitter reunion. Though this year, I don't know, everyone's all over the place. We'll see what happens, and a lot of people are not happy that it's a Thursday.
Yeah, that puts a damper on a lot of folks' plans.
I took Friday off. I already requested it. Friday's off. So we'll be there on Thursday on opening night. I might catch a preseason game too, depending on how that goes. We're going to give a shout out to the Hockey Podcast Network at HockeyPodNet for hosting us and spreading us around. Vintage Detroit, which is the only place you get your Detroit jerseys from and worked on. We also have an exclusive t-shirt collection through them. So if you go to vintagedetroit.com, click on the Keep It Local tab, you'll find the Grindline Podcast collection. Got some shirts on there. I'm going to have to come up with some new ones for this coming season, depending on what happens, I guess. Maybe a Tarasenko show, since he'll be here for a couple seasons. Maybe a shirt designed for him. Sub to us on YouTube. Go to our channel. Turn on the notifications. You'll get notified every time a new episode goes live. And go to patreon.com/Grindline Podcast. You can sub to our Patreon. We're going to be moving to 2 episodes per week starting during next season. We'll put a little bit of extra content out on Patreon too.
So. In a month, right?
Yeah, in a month, starting in the month during the season.
It might still be this guy one show per week with classes still going. So final semester.
We'll see how it all shakes out, but that is the plan going forward. So go to Patreon and sub to our Patreon. There'll be some extra content that comes out during the season, as well as taking listener questions and Patreon questions at the end of each episode. But that is going to do it for us tonight. So for Ryan, I am Greg. You stay classy. Down.